This episode brought to you by dating. Are you of the female species? Tired of spending money on food? Want to get some alcohol for free? Is Uber getting too expensive? Look no further than dating. It'll get you downtown having a good time in no time. And what's better, you get to save money doing it. So, it's time to get your finances in order and try dating. Side effects may include a broken heart, a confused mind, and relationship issues. Dating. It's for everyone, I think. Let's hit that theme song. Oh, nice. We're going for, existential vibes. Hannah the human. I can get down with it. Get down with it. Get down with it. Okay. Oh, wait, hold on. I was just checking my vocal levels. Okay, unsorting the chords. So I wrote down some questions because we're going to continue Hannah, the origin story of Hannah the human. Last episode, the very first one, which thank you all if you listened to that. And if you're tuning in for the first time to this one, thank you. There's another one to listen to if you want to. So I just kind of asked myself the question, Hannah the human, why that name? And then I rambled on about religion and Jesus and church and pandemic and all the things. And then I sang a little song. So look where a question can take you. And as I was just writing down questions real quick, I couldn't really think of any or choose any because I realized I just wanted to talk to process all of it. I kind of wanted to just debrief on my last podcast episode. And basically the question I had for myself was, man, why do I talk about religion so much? You know, either talking about how it's rough for me or talking about how it's amazing for me. All that to say, it's a big part of my life because I'm talking about it all the time. And I had a conversation with my sister the other night and we were just talking about religion forever. And she was like, I haven't even told you about the cute guys in my class. And I was like, oh my gosh. So then we talked for another hour about that. Why do I talk about, why do I just find so much joy talking about religion or complaining about the Bible or things like that? And maybe that's because that's how I was raised. That was kind of the identity I had growing up. When I think about what culture I was in, there really wasn't much outside of my family that I was invested in besides church and religion. When I was a teenager, my family was going through a rough time, a particularly rough time. Basically, and I can go into detail later about this, but I just don't want to go into it right now. Basically, my mom has struggled with an eating disorder and addiction. And then I had a younger brother who ended up passing away from a sickness. And so he died when I was 12. And so my parents are dealing with that loss and we're kind of alone. And we were alone and isolated as a homeschool family out in rural Minnesota. And so add all that up, and the only thing outside of my family was the groups that we would get together around, church or the Bible or religious groups, basically. I wasn't part of a school. I mean, I did tennis with my twin sister, because I have a twin sister, by the way. I did tennis for a, season in our freshman year. And it was really hectic being a homeschool family that lives outside of town, participating in school sports because you have to drive, or get your parents to drive you in to practice every day and all that stuff. And that was a culture shock. So thinking about that, I'm like, oh, no wonder I just talk about religion and Christianity and the Bible and God and existential questions all the time, because that's what I grew up in. That was the water I swam in. Okay. So yeah, the question I had written down here was, is there more to you than philosophical religious thoughts? And yeah, there is, I'm sure. Like, I'm an incredible singer. And I would like to be good at swing dancing someday. I enjoy dancing. And I love ice cream. Oh my gosh. I have some in the freezer. I should eat some. Oh, I love ice cream. I in my mind have a food triangle, and ice cream is its own section of the triangle. It really is the only food triangle. You know, make sure you get your protein and your veggies and your ice cream in. It has its own section in the list of healthy foods to include in your daily diet. Okay, I don't eat ice cream every day. It kind of ruins it if you eat it every day, but it is just nothing gives me comfort like ice cream. So there's that to me. But to continue on with this idea of, you know, why is religion and Christianity and God and the Bible and all of that so forefront in my thinking and in my experience? Well, let me just share about my experience. There I was, born the eldest child of Matt and Kim Doda in Santa Rosa, California, July 28th, 1999 at, oh shoot, what time was I born? I feel like it was like 9 p.m. around then. Anyway, all I know is I was born 2 minutes before my twin sister. Her name's Emma, by the way, my twin sister, my bestie for life. I'm sure she'll be on this podcast. She's an amazing, awesome person. I definitely want to do episodes about regenerative farming and agriculture because she's a professional farmer gardener person. She's running a business. Shout out Emma and Rose, her business partner, killing it, providing Northern Idaho with fresh, amazing vegetables. So there I was, born into the bright lights of a hospital via cesarean birth because I was cut out of the womb and I made it out first. And I'm proud of that fact because my twin sister is taller and stronger than me and has always been, which I then reply to that fact by reminding everybody that since I was born first, I was sat on for 9 months. That's why I was first in line. And so it's really tough, even reaching the stature and strength and ability I've reached when you're sat on for the first 9 months of your life. I mean, I had to overcome great odds just to get out of here looking as hot and amazing as I do. So I'm born and we live in Santa Rosa, California. It's sweet little suburban life. Then my younger brother, Levi, is born, and he's the one who gets sick and dies. Spoiler alert. Sorry, guys. I don't know. You either deal with death by avoiding it or by joking about it. And I'm the latter, as you'll figure out. But I'm sorry if I offended anyone. So Levi's born, and there was nothing wrong with him. FYI, for the first 2 years of his life, he had a genetic disease that ran in our family, and it didn't manifest until 2 years old. Just wanted to clarify that, to give the picture that it appeared for the first 2 years of his life. All was normal. And so we're a normal little happy suburban family in Northern California. And then we move up to the Sierra Nevada desert where my family's ranch is. And my dad becomes a rancher working with my grandpa who owns the ranch. That didn't really work out. And so my dad became a real estate agent, mortgage person. Basically, he helped people get loans so they could buy houses and property and all that stuff. My little sister Millie is on the way. My parents love children, so they kept having them. And then Millie was born. By this time, my brother Levi is starting to get sick. And by the way, my parents were both Christian and involved in their church. They led a small group and all that stuff when I was born. So then when my brother Levi revealed that he's sick, they start believing and praying for him to be healed because honestly, there weren't other options. The only other, it's a known disease that the only end is death. There's no cure for it. So it makes total sense that in response to death being the only answer that you would choose a miracle to believe in. And honestly, I hear stories and know of people who experience physical healing miracles. So, totally feasible that could have happened. And so that kind of became our family identity there. Having a sick kid that we believe is going to be healed. I mean, we went to Texas twice. We took these big family road trips to healing conferences down there. We went to a healing conference in Southern California. We went up to Redding, California, and went to Bethel a time or two. Heard this guy named Randy Clark who talks about healing and all that stuff. So we got into the crowd, that rolls around on the floor and sings the bridge 4 million times as the glory cloud descends upon the service. And a lot of times I felt really uncomfortable in those environments as a kid, which I remember thinking as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, isn't this odd that I feel uncomfortable in the presence of God? Shouldn't God feel totally comfortable to me since I'm a kid and so innocent and not, evil or anything? Like in the Bible, Jesus always said, be like the little children. And then I thought, I'm a little child. And yet I'm really kind of weirded out by this service right now. But then there were a lot of moments where I really enjoyed it and I really felt like connected to love and God and power, and it was awesome. But it also felt really weird to me, which felt weird to me that it felt weird because shouldn't God feel like home to this innocent child of soul, It's just interesting thinking back, clearly remembering, how you can have a thought or a memory of something when you were a kid, but that thought and memory is from when you were older, now as an adult or as a teenager, thinking back to when you were little. But then there's those thoughts and memories that you clearly are remembering now as an adult, but you're remembering what you thought and remembered at that age as that kid. And it's weird, but that's exactly, I remember feeling awkward about a lot of these religious ceremonies and services. And at the same time, I wanted to be open to it. And so I remember one time we were at one of the healing conferences in Texas, and they were having a be prayed on for the Holy Spirit to come upon you thing. And people were falling down, whoa, and getting blacked out and all that stuff and encountering love. And they really were encountering love. And it just looked weird to me, but I thought, okay, I want to be open to this. I want God, so I went down. I didn't fall over, nothing happened, but I put my little hands out and prayed. It wasn't a bad experience. I have family members who had kind of a whoa experience in that moment, and it was positive. So I'm not dissing it at all. I just didn't experience it. And so I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll get my whoa moment, or that moment when a prophetic word is given. Is anyone named Hannah? Is anyone named Hannah here? Do they like to play the guitar? God is telling me, Hannah, fear not, you will make it on American Idol. Whoa, Lord. I never got that moment. But I've always been waiting for that. I've always been waiting to be validated by some pastor calling me out in the middle of a conference, or a crazy spiritual moment where I see gold floating down on me as I'm taking a walk outside and I'm transfixed and see angels or something. Or I'm driving in my car and suddenly a bright light shines upon me and says, Hannah, Hannah, why are you persecuting me? Okay, that's me joking about a story in the Bible where this guy Saul is riding on a horse to this town called Damascus, and Saul killed Christians. And then he has this vision of God saying, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And then he goes blind, and then he re-identifies by the name Paul, and then he becomes like a leader in the Christian church. See, there I go again, talking about religion. But that's, what I did. Like every morning we had our little devotional. My mom trained us, and I really appreciate it. We had quiet time in the morning and we'd read the Bible. And my mom was an amazing educator, and she homeschooled us, and she wanted to be an English teacher. So she really liked teaching. And so we read a lot of Shakespeare plays and literature and all that because, English teacher. She also had us learn some biblical Hebrew and Greek. So really cool. Got to study the Bible that way because fast forward, now my youngest brother and last brother, the parents stopped having kids at that point. They wanted more, but it just didn't work out. I really loved being part of a big family. It wasn't super big. We hung out with people who had, 11, 12, 13 kids. We had just 5. One of them was really sick, though, so, I feel like that counts for at least 2. We had moved up to Oregon because the market crashed, so my dad had to get a new job, and he got a new job working at, guessed it, a Christian camp. See? Here I am. I'm just surrounded by all these Christians, which is awesome. It's just making sense to me why I talk about it so much. So there we are at a Christian camp, and my dad is one of the finance director people there, and my little baby brother is born, and my mom is starting to get into the Hebrew roots of the Christian faith, She'd always been attracted to that, and because Jesus was Jewish, right? And so we followed Jesus and, going to church and all that. Oh, and by the way, when my brother got diagnosed and we started going to the healing conferences, my parents got less plugged into the organized church and more plugged into their small group and kind of house church. And so we sort of distanced ourselves from organized religion, and we're just more like relational and, going to big conferences or meeting in small living room gatherings that were really personal and connected and relational. And so that was a whole different phase. And then we also fellowshipped on Sundays for a bit, which that word means you just do churchy things with people. We got together with some ex-Mennonites, who wore their long dresses and head coverings, but were no longer part of the Mennonite church, but still carried some of those traditions, and we'd sing hymns with them and stuff. So I had a very wide experience. We didn't really go to Catholic or anything like that, just more Protestant, evangelical. I have a very wide experience of lots of different expressions, small little churches, big churches, mega churches, conferences, services that go on for hours where people wave flags, where there's altar calls, those kind, the quiet ones where you just sing hymns, the ones with large families and conservative dresses, the ones with small families and less conservative dresses. I've been to them all. And now, as I've grown older, I've also been to a few Catholic masses. I haven't been to a Lutheran church yet, but I've been to some Episcopal services. I've tried to broaden my experience. But back to me as a kid, now we're living up in Oregon, and I am 8 or 9 years old, somewhere around there. And my mom is into the Hebrew roots of the faith, so like the things that Jesus celebrated. So as a Jew, he celebrated the feasts that were written in the Old Testament, like Passover and Sukkot or Feast of Tabernacles and Hanukkah and stuff like that. And so we started getting into celebrating those, and then we started going to this group that met on Saturdays, this church that was teaching about the Old Testament and how to be a Hebrew roots Christian. The like Sabbath-y people who do Jewish stuff, but they're not Jews. They're Christians. And they're not Jews who have turned Christian. They're just Christians who have turned. That's why the term Hebrew, rather than Jew. Anyway, all that to say, what it looked like was on Saturdays, we'd go to this building and have, a worship time and a teaching time. And then we would share a meal with this congregation. And my parents, and thus me, learned a lot about the Old Testament and the feasts and stuff in the Bible, and just dove into that. And also learned about how a lot of the Christian celebrations like Easter and Christmas and all this stuff and things like communion and stuff have roots in the Hebrew things, or have roots in the Roman and Greek like celebrations, like how Christmas isn't really when Jesus is born. Most everybody knows that. Even though that's the time when people celebrate Jesus's birth, it's actually the time when the equinox is. And so there's a lot of connecting things that we do at Christmas that connect with what the Romans would do around the turn of the century as their religious practices and stuff. And so my parents kind of stopped being into doing a lot of those things because they had, quote, pagan roots. And so there we were, no longer celebrating Christmas and Easter. and we were celebrating Passover and Sukkot and not working on Saturdays. But my parents never went like hardcore into it. They just kind of, some things stuck, like the resting on Saturday thing and the not eating pork or shellfish thing, the eating kosher, because that's in the Bible about what foods you can and can't eat. And then we moved to Minnesota. My parents just like to move. Well, really my dad, that adventurous side that I've picked up on. Their reasoning that I remember them telling me was they just didn't feel settled where they were and wanted to live at a hobby farm, which we actually ended up doing once we moved to Minnesota. We ended up living on a hobby farm for like 5 years, which was the longest place I had ever lived at one place by that time. And still by that time, I move around a lot. Up there, my brother died, so that was really rough. My mom started dealing with her health issues. It was just a rough time. And then we were kind of trying out different churches and stuff there, because basically we just hung out us together. We didn't really go to other homeschool groups or whatever. So the only time that I would hang out with other people was if we went to a church. So we were looking for different churches so that we could have friends and stuff. My parents didn't really find any churches they super liked or connected with, and didn't find any people or small group or anything that really worked with them. And then we randomly met this family at a homeschool track and field event. Shout out to the Kerrs. And then we started going up to their house every Saturday and fellowshipping, which by that I mean we would sing worship songs and study the Bible together and eat food. So you're starting to get the idea of what fellowship means. We would do that every Saturday, and then it was just a long drive. And so we stopped doing that after about 2 years, which that was hard on me, I remember, in a way, because that was my only connection with people. By that time, though, me and my twin sister Emma had started being part of the homeschool group's theater production that was in town. So we had some connection with people who weren't of the last name Doda. And we also worked at the little fun center right next to our property. It had like go-karts and mini golf and stuff. So we would connect with people there. But other than that, didn't really connect with that many people. Didn't go to people's houses that much or anything. Saying all this, I'm realizing, wow, that's pretty weird. We were kind of isolated and weird. Like looking back, I'm thinking to myself, didn't this raise red flags? Well, it finally did, I guess, because then my dad was like, we're going to church and we're going to plug in. And yeah, but it is interesting to me that there was no concept of plugging into anything that wasn't in a religious context, It wasn't like, let's plug into our neighbors. Well, we kind of had one neighbor we would see and connected with, but there was just this idea I had that I picked up from growing up that you could really only connect with people if they had that same faith as you, If they were Christian, then you're going to connect. Then you have a bond, a thing to connect you, then you can, quote, go deep with them. Thinking about how I had that ideology makes me realize why I'm putting so much effort into changing my ideology around that, because that's a very isolating way to live, and elitist too when I think about it. But maybe it isn't. Anyway, for me, it felt elitist now, or it just didn't help me connect with others. So there we are in Minnesota. And we start going back to church again, and then we move again. And we move back to California, Northern California, that High Sierra desert where I lived before, where my dad was a real estate agent, but this time he tries to get back in real estate. This is my last year of school. I'm kind of homeschooling myself because my mom is in and out of treatment for her eating disorder. Me and my twin sister decide once we're done with school, we are going to join a 9-month internship at the church my uncle goes to in Northern California. I'm glad that I chose to do that, just broadens your life. It was a great step for Emma and I to be more on our own, but we got to live with an amazing couple, Bill and Teresa. Love them. Kind of phase into adulthood. It was just beautiful. I'm just so grateful for how that was all set up. Really looking back makes me see that I was cared for and protected and nurtured. I didn't realize how rough it was at home until I had left and got to be around people who weren't depressed and stuff. Because my mom struggled with depression and addiction and stuff. So yeah, moving out, but being surrounded by really loving people. Again, to go back to the Christian church thing, it's all in a religious context. I'm at Christian people's houses who go to the church that I'm interning for. So I was just all things church. I interacted with non-Christians at my job. I worked a few hours a week at Wilson's Leather in the outlets. Yes, selling overpriced leather and fake leather. That's how I describe it. Got my taste of sales, paid the bills, thanks to Emma. Emma and I kind of shared our money for food, and Emma is really good with saving. And I'm not a terrible spender, but I'm not a saver, So thanks to Emma, I made it through financially. I did borrow $400 from her, but I did pay it back because then I started working at Chipotle and I worked more hours and I made more money. So there I am. And now I'm heavily involved in the church. Then we catch up to where I started my last podcast, which was 2020, when everything came to a halt. And I'm seeing now, oh, no wonder I started thinking about the context within which I had always lived, because suddenly it stopped. Suddenly all the programs and the services and the church and the connecting point with other people, which for me was church and Christianity and Bible studies and things like that, came to a halt. And I mean, it wasn't just that, it was literally everything everybody did came to a halt, So if you were into soccer, suddenly you couldn't play soccer with the group you usually played soccer with. If you were into your office job, suddenly you're all working from home and you aren't connecting with those people. So it's a great time to suddenly realize the bubble you're in, because the bubble has burst. Boom. As I'm recounting this kind of overall view of my life to you all, I'm realizing, oh, no wonder this is my life. No wonder Christianity and church and the Bible and religion is my life. Because on top of this, my mom and my dad are deep thinkers, but I speak specifically about my mom because she homeschooled us, and so she picked a lot of that curriculum, that the books we would read, and she had us read a wide variety of things, and she was always into thinking broadly and studying and getting a liberal education, meaning not that she wanted us all to be Democrats. She meant liberal as in get to taste from all these different pools of art and creativity and literature and history, so that we can see what we gravitated towards and what we liked. And so I really attribute me being a thinker to my mom, because she gave space for that. She had us write essays about topics, and she had us study drawing and history and practice writing poetry. I got distracted by looking at kids sledding down the hill outside my window because it snowed. What a shocker. It snowed. It's winter and it snowed. Oh, there's more people. And the hill doesn't have much snow at all on it. Like, you can still see the grass poking through. But I bet it's pretty slick and slippery because it's kind of been sleeting as well. So it's probably icy. But the hill is actually part of this cemetery that is right out my apartment, which I'm very grateful to be by the cemetery, because it's a place where I can jog and walk around respectfully of all the dead people. And other people do it too. I'm not the only one. It's just a place where people can walk their dogs and visit their dead loved ones and stuff. And I'm grateful for it because it's a place that isn't concrete and it has a great hill. So I'm going to need to buy a sled, and when it's actually snowy, try it, because it is a nice steep hill. I could really get going. And then what's great is the hill is like a mowed grass lawn part. And so I can slip and slide down then, but then I'm going to hit an unmowed, deep, thick grass part. So that will slow me down. And so basically it's a perfect sledding hill. So I cannot wait until it snows for real. And I will be sledding down the hill. Yeah, so I'm thoroughly distracted now by that and don't quite know what I was exactly talking about. Hold on. I have regrouped us back from the distraction of the sledders down the hill. And I've decided it is time to end this episode. And of course, I'm going to end it with a little bit of creativity. I'm going to spice it up, though, in honor of giving my story of me growing up as a kid. I am going to read something I wrote as a, how old was I? 17-year-old. It is my graduation speech, and it is called Contrasting the Philosophy of Plato and Aristotle with Biblical Theology. It's written in the essay format, with the double spacing and all of that. It starts out Hannah L. Doda. Next, Kim Doda, in parentheses, Mama. Graduation speech 2017. Lots of spaces, like double space. Underlined. Contrasting the philosophy of Plato and Aristotle with biblical theology. So I wrote it as an essay, but then it appears that I don't remember this, but apparently I read it at our little graduation we did at home. It was funny. How do you graduate as a homeschooler? Well, my parents figured out. You just literally say, you've graduated. And they did they did print out little, what are those called? Diplomas. They did print out diplomas for me and Emma. I don't know that they did anything for Millie, my other sister. She just is doing college now. So she's done with high school. All right. Here we go. My essay. Hi, everybody. I don't know about you, but when I actually get motivated enough, I like looking up words in the dictionary. Well, I was motivated the other day, so I looked up the definition of the word idea. It means a thought or conception, a plan of action and intention. But it also means a form or pattern of which individual copies are made. That's basically Plato's philosophy summed up in one sentence. And that's one of the topics I'm going to speak to you about today. I will also tell you about Aristotle, Plato's famous pupil. Aristotle became famous because he disagreed with his teacher. This disagreement is what I'm going to contrast today. On one hand, Plato's belief in the material and ideal realms, and on the other, Aristotle's belief in the union of matter and form. I will then discuss how those beliefs agree and disagree with the character of the God of the Bible. So, we already understand what Plato means by the word idea, a form or pattern of which objects in the material world derive their being. To put it simply, a cookie cutter. Plato believed that everything has a mold which forms and defines what it is. Because he looked around and saw that, for example, every horse was different, but every horse was a horse. Though one might be brown, another white, one tall, one short, each animal possessed the qualities that made it a horse. You don't need to go to college and get a degree in science to differentiate a cow from a horse or a horse from a dog. Plato understood this and concluded that there must be a realm of ideas, a realm of absolutes. Metaphorically, a shelf with a bunch of cookie cutters, some shaped like trees, some like cats, some like dogs, etc. He saw this world we live in as a shadowland full of copies of the originals, copies of ideals. This is where Aristotle disagreed with his tutor Plato. Aristotle didn't see the idea of an object as separate from the physical object itself. He saw the idea, or as he called it, the form of an object as derivative of the physical object, not its definition. For Aristotle, there existed no realm outside the physical, so the form of an object was only its classification. For example, Aristotle perceived that all humans were similar because each one had 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 ears, 1 nose. Therefore, he categorized all men and women as humans. No ideal human existed outside this world. Instead, for Aristotle, the human form was a creation of the mind. Similarities perceived and organized into a definition of humanity. So Plato believes in ideas and Aristotle believes in forms. What's the big difference? The big difference is each man's perception of, quote, God. I put God in quotes because neither man recognized God, the God of the Bible, as real. In fact, neither acknowledged any God. Instead, Plato believed in a great idea, also known as the great good. Aristotle believed in the immovable mover. Both those titles fit with the character of God. He is the creator of all things, the mastermind behind all ideas. He is truly the great idea. We read in Genesis that he spoke and there became light, stars, dirt, plants, animals, men. And since he is the creator of all things, the title, quote, immovable mover, describes him well too. For though he doesn't change, he brings about all change. As we read in the Bible, he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. But this unchangeable God breathed into man, initiating all change and action. In the Gospel of John, Yeshua, that is Jesus, says that he will draw all men to himself. This is exactly what Aristotle meant by the term immovable mover, something that isn't movement in itself, but something that causes movement by attracting all things to itself. Yet Aristotle saw the immovable mover as a physical phenomena only because he refused to accept Plato's world beyond this world, the realm of ideas. This is the part of Aristotle's philosophy that disagrees with the Bible. For God is beyond the physical. As we read in the Gospel of John, God is spirit and must be worshipped in spirit. This aligns with Plato's theory of ideas, but Plato also failed to fully understand who God is. For Plato's great good wasn't personal, wasn't something with which he could have a relationship. Plato's great idea didn't have a character. But the God of the Bible certainly has a character and desires a personal relationship with his creation. He reveals himself as father and husband. As Yeshua, Jesus, says to his disciples before his death, "You are no longer my servants, but instead my friends." So after learning that Plato believed in a world of ideas separate from material objects, and that Aristotle believed in the inseparable connection between matter and form, the question is, did these men, after all their brilliant philosophizing, come to know God? Was believing in a great idea or an immovable mover sufficient for salvation? Only God knows. And since God knows, I choose to know God. And 2 ways I can understand him better are to think of him as eternity's great idea and as humanity's immovable mover. Well, that was very interesting for me to read back to you, because a lot of it I feel is so true to me. You know, like I can just imagine 17-year-old Hannah there, and I feel so much pride, actually. Like, way to go, Hannah. Some 17-year-olds don't think about this stuff, but you were freaking reading Aristotle and Plato. And I'm really proud about that. And I'm like, no wonder I'm so thoughtful. Also, I feel so much gratitude to my mom. Thank you, Mama, for teaching me, for showing me how to think. And also, I'm so blatantly aware of how enwrapped in the context of Christianity I was, you know? The fact that I've got to throw in there, does this save Plato and Aristotle? Like, that wasn't even the question proposed at the thesis, the beginning of the essay. So, yeah, it's so Christian of me to have been concerned with if they made it to heaven, because the idea is if they made it to heaven, then we can trust what they say, you know? But I do appreciate my nuanced thinking, even at 17 years old, that was able to find the truth, or what I feel is truth, out of the teachings that weren't part of the Bible, which is what I considered the truth. And I still do. I still look at things through the context of the Bible. You know, that's my filter I look at things through. I'm just a bit more honest about that, I hope, now, and a bit more aware that there's other filters with which to look through the world. Back then, it was a filter that I wasn't even aware I was looking through. Or maybe I was slightly aware, but not as aware as I am now. So I believe that I'm progressing. So all that to say, I hope you enjoyed getting a little glimpse into 17-year-old Hannah's brain through that creative piece I wrote. I'm really enjoying actually sharing these creative things. It was really fun to share something that I've written a long while ago. That other song that I shared last episode, I had written a little while back, not as long as back when I was 17. One of these days, I'll definitely share a song I wrote when I was 14, and I still sing it today. So that's actually pretty wild to think that I was writing stuff at 14 that I still relate to at 24. It's been a decade. Just goes to show that I'm a creative genius. So with that, I guess peace out.